Okay, so in this section we're going to be talking about how the body responds to life-threatening situations. Now in our everyday life we go around and we're walking around doing everyday activities such as walking the dog, doing the hoovering, going out shopping, and while we're out doing those activities our brain's actually on alert and it's scanning the environment for anything that might be threatening. So it's looking out for, I don't know, person with a weapon or potentially somebody who's going to sort of run and attack us. All those things are being monitored for on a very subconscious level. So the very second that we actually think, there's something going on, I can see a threat, that information is passed to an area of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is there to help us process the emotional information. If the amygdala agrees that there is a threat, it'll pass that information on to the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is responsible for activating two systems which are designed to help with self-preservation. Now the first system is the sympathomedullary pathway, which is there to help us to respond immediately to the threat. Now what happens is that when the SAM pathway activates, it goes to the adrenal medulla and helps us to secrete a hormone known as adrenaline. Now adrenaline is really important in getting the body ready for what we know as our fight or flight response. So with this response we are getting ourselves ready to deal with the threat. And to do this we might need to have more oxygen in our body. So if we're going to have more oxygen in our body, the adrenaline is going to help our lungs to fill and empty more quickly. We might need to pump that oxygen around our body faster, so the adrenaline is going to help our heart to beat faster. Adrenaline is also really important for helping us to maintain good blood sugar levels. So glucose is the fuel of the body, and if we're under pressure, what we really need is we need there to be more of that glucose available to us to use. So adrenaline has a really important function in helping us release glucose from areas like the liver. So really, when we are activating our SAM pathway, we are getting our body ready for that immediate fight or flight response. Now that's really high energy cost to the body. It really takes a lot to mount that response, but it's important if it's going to help us to stay alive. But we can't maintain that response for a prolonged length of time, so a secondary system activates. So this secondary system is known as the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis, or HPA axis, and basically what this does is helps us to maintain a response to a threat. So if the threat's going on for longer than say 20 to 40 minutes, this secondary system will kick in and make sure that our body stays fueled, so that it enables us to release more glucose so that we can continue to either fight whatever the threat is or run away from it. Now a HPA axis is really important in helping us to normalise after a threat has receded as well, because what will happen is our bodies will continue to monitor the situation, and if our brain goes, do you know what, the threat is over, what will happen is that our cortisol levels will start to diminish, and when we get reduced cortisol, our body knows that the threat is over and that we can go back to normal functioning. So the HPA axis, very important to maintaining a longer response to threat, does this via the release of the hormone cortisol. Once the threat is over, cortisol reduces and we're back to normal. So if we have somebody who's exposed to a really high threat, so an acute stressor, what can we do to help them? What if we find somebody who's been in, for example, an earthquake or a car accident? Now, obviously it's important to give them medical help, but is there anything psychologically we can do to support them? Professor David Alexander suggests that one of the things that we could do is provide psychological first aid. So alongside offering medical first aid, we could help to look after somebody's mental well-being after they've been through a stressful experience. So David Alexander suggests that psychological first aid should comprise of many different components, but he suggests that one of the first things that a psychological first aider should do is give comfort, to reassure the person that the nasty event they've been exposed to is over and allow them to express their feelings about it, to sort of give some initial outpourings of anger or grief. The next thing that the psychological first aider has to do is make sure that that person is safe. So after a major event, we can sometimes become quite impaired cognitively, so our brains might not function so well. So it's important that a psychological first aider is aware of that and is ready to, stop somebody wandering off or carrying out behaviours that may actually put them in more danger. The other thing that psychological first aiders can do is give back control to that person. When we're in a disaster situation, we can feel quite helpless. So by giving people a meaningful job to do or asking them to look after a certain activity such as making the tea, we can give people a sense of control back over their lives. The other important thing that a psychological first aider can do is reunite families. We know that the social support that we get from friends and families is really important during times of stress. So actually, psychological first aiders should spend quite a lot of time getting information about people's friends and relatives and where they might want to meet up with them, or allowing them to use mobile phones or computers to contact people to come and support them in their time of need.